Welcome, everybody, to Flat Earth Nation. It is a Flat Earth Nation. Don't let them tell you anything else unless they're willing to debate you in a fair and honest way. I'm just looking at the monitor, hoping things catch up here. You know, there's always a little bit of a delay. And now I'm happy. Now I'm happy because I know Luther's here at least, and somebody, the message is going to get out. Brother, I'm glad to see you. I want to share just a little bit I've written here first thing this morning. Tommy is 10 hours away. He's back in his hometown, checking in on his mom and dad, his big brother, his other big brother, Dean, the guy that is, he's taken over the Gartman Plumbing and Heating there in Big Spring. So I hope that Tommy is doing well. We had a great talk this morning about blood types, building on some of the conversations I was sharing with you yesterday. Good to see you here, Matt, chiming in. Evidently, I've set my intent. Elementary evidence exists, epistemologically explained, so the elect of God will trust his book of remembrance and be blessed eternally. Now, welcome, Aaron. We got, this is what I wrote while I was waiting. I had about half hour. So I wanted to say something poignant at the start because who knows where this is going. Once I start going back through the tabs and then back forward, I know I got Judas, Tribe of Dan. I left the Basques out, and I think I left the blood out. I hope I mentioned blood in that title because we're really getting into tons of weird stuff. But I want you to know, based on a song I wrote in the 70s, gave the copyrights to the band Bitch, headed up by one Ron Rodriguez, known as Scab, was in the 1970s a tribute band to the Rolling Stones. But this is a new take on it because we're living it right now. War is like a sausage wishing it was never seen made. Keep 21 guns. Keep 21 guns for the message. For scaled up war's new dead. 21 guns to start the memories fade. Hell bent on being sent off to their death, they went. They feared not fitting in or loved the country, wanting a win. A grave, a casket, a body therein, the 21 gun salute begins. War is death. It's all bad. It's nothing good for us. I'm going to just go right in, see what happens as we go back through the tabs, and then we'll slowly work our way through them, hoping for the best. Sledgehammer by Peter Gabriel. I think I was supposed to be playing this while I was reading. This is the new stuff. Super Family Database. Come on. Really? Yep. We're going to look at that. Not yet. What? Tease. Can't wait, right? Everybody wants to know the super families grouped together domains which have an evolutionary relationship, but at least it's got the genomes. And I'll tell you, I'm having to work my way up to it because getting through it, I'm just sick about you know, the fact that I haven't reminded anybody in over 2 years about the copper in non-monkey blood. Normally, most of the copper in your blood is carried by a protein called ceruloplasmin. Oh, ceruloplasmin. Adults have 50 to 100 milligrams of copper in their bodies. Copper is really cool too. Mostly in muscle and liver. It helps make melanin, bone, and the connective tissues that hold you together. Breakpoints in your stone body. Hey, copper's cool. Look, that was in, I believe that was in a Nephilim one time, and that's why it looks like that. Just fitting in and flowing around there. We're going to look at copper hard. Hard copper. Yikes, what? Hey, man, look at that. Looks like it's got, I think I see the Star of David is what they call it now. And they're using that as a graphic 2D representation of something. It's the Star of Rimfram, I think is what they called it in the Bible. No, you're not going to believe it. This is from an octopus. Same deal, right? I think it's got little arrows on their little holes going right through it. Like, wow. That's an octopus blood, I believe. Isn't that cool? You get to look forward to that. Man, you know I hate these people messing around with the blood. I just can't stand it. Look at this grandma. These Basque people. A lot of weird stuff going on there. Who made this video? Oh, this guy's cool. He'll let me show as much as I want. He's my brother. But check this out. They love this. It's blood sausage. They call themselves good Christians, but they're over there eating blood because it's good for their soul. That's what they said. You'll see a lot of sound. It's not, I think it's this video. I'm going to blame the video.
Work to do at home. So if you get together and do it, it's fun.
It's agriculture. It's important. And this will not continue doing it. So that makes me feel good.
Yikes, did he do that?
Still needs more, yeah.
We do in Spain, you know. My grandpa and grandpa, mother and father, and we always do that. That's traditional.
I have pictures of my great grandmother in the same kitchen making morcillas, so I liked that aspect of it. Just do the same thing that they did when they first came over from the Basque Country.
It's the blood sausage event, or the morcilla and bazaar dinner to Basque-Dinner. This is a fabulous weekend. We're going to make blood sausage each year. It's a long tradition. It's been going at least for 40 or 50 years.
Wouldn't you think it'd been called, you know, I thought I was the one teaching the recent reset stuff, and this guy's going like, oh, yeah, long tradition, way back, you know, at least 40, 50 years that they can account for. You know, that's when grandma came over. Hey, we'll get into a lot of cool stuff here with these guys. I didn't get to preview a lot of this stuff. Lacedaemonian Greeks. Oh, the tribal emblem of the Danite was a snake with a serpent in its claws. I think they mean a flying winged dragon. So we're going to be looking at that, looks like. Early Danites fled Egypt. You know, we're going to get a lot of different people's opinion on what's going on with Dan, tribe of Dan, that some people call them a mighty seafaring tribe. Just so you know, there are two different opinions. There's the Bible's opinion that yucky, Dan yucky. And then there's the two-seed British Israelite white power. No, Dan's the best, man. Denmark, Amsterdam. Dan went everywhere. Without Dan, we'd be nothing. So you probably can tell where I fall on that. We'll be looking at that, getting into the tribe of Dan Doobie Doo Dan. What?
Occultish looking cities rising up across the Central Asian nations and along this New Belt and Road project that is a direct link between the Turkic originated peoples of what I believe is Gog Magog. I think they come from the tribes that descended from Japheth's son Magog, and they are in conjunction with the Edomite red dragons of the black nobilities of Europe. And I'm not sure if the Rothschilds are a Turkic family or a nobility family. They may be a mixture of both. And so we have the promised land to the descendants of Abraham, who were the two sons of Isaac. And
okay, things I think getting a little wonky here. And this is a young lady. Look at that, 3 more subscribers since last night. I've shown her videos a couple times. Overall, I think she's a very interesting young lady. I hope she doesn't believe this is really, because this is where, British Israelites, boom, diddy bop, all of them, Hebrew roots, they all go wrong by thinking this is where it's at. Not all of the people that teach Hebrew roots think it's happening here, but some do. All that some do think it's here are wrong. But they're going to give you the breakdown of Dan, I think. But they're going to talk about Jacob and Esau, and that's something I feel like I'm going to have to address, or I missed it and I'm going to have to find it.
we know that now I believe that the red dragon is of the non-blessed son of Isaac, and Kiev, the capital city of the Gog Magog Khazarians. Tell me what you think. Do you think that the ghost cities are part of this plan, and do they intend to repopulate them with whoever's left after this great reset? There's the Albert Pike prophecy or letter that was found apparently about the 3 world wars, which may be tying into what's happening now. And that states that according to the prophecy, the First World War was planned to overthrow the Tsars in Russia and make Russia a communist stronghold. World War II, he said, sparked the catalyst to destroy Nazism, which wasn't really a problem before the First World War. The true purpose of World War II was that communism could take over myriad governments and for a sovereign state of Israel to be set up in Palestine. And the Third World War was a religious...
I see that the prophecy letter just happened to be mentioned in a book, 1958, the year that they basically unveiled the new history leading up to, you know, their version of the rewrite when they faked JFK's death, and the mobs basically announced, we are running things now. In the China mob, it was basically a mob fight, and the China mob won because they were more motivated for revenge, you know, and now they're doing that selling heroin thing on us, forcing it on us, whether we like it or not, just like we did to them back then. Now, I thought she was going to insult my favorite, Jacob. Not, we'll have to go back a few minutes before we press on.
War. There would be fought between the West and leaders of the Islamic East, which fits in with the east and west of the beasts of the earth. There's also Esau's Blessing, because but they did originate whoever's left after this great reset. Esau's Blessing, because Isaac did bless Esau, but he couldn't give him the main blessing that Jacob tricked him out of, I guess you could call it.
You see, I don't like that at all, because I'd like to know where her or anybody else can find one Bible verse where God is angry with Jacob, where God calls Jacob, you bad man, you're a liar, Jacob, and you didn't deserve this. Oh no, I look at it entirely different.
In that blessing, it says, but when you decide to break free, you will shake his yoke from your neck. These were the only words of blessing the father had left to give his son. The happy blessings were stolen away by his brother in a moment of deceit.
Stolen away by Jacob? Now, who does the Bible over and over and over again? Who was named Israel? Who had the 12 sons? It was Jacob. He was the one of promise. Rebekah and Jacob risked their lives to keep it the bloodline of Jesus Christ, not in an Edomite of Esau, the wrong blessing. And anybody that misinterprets it that Jacob was the stealer, no, the Bible, because Esau was the despiser of his birthright. The Bible kind of, and I'll show it, I've shown it before. Isaac was sick. He was out of his mind. He didn't know what he was doing blessing Esau. But thank God that Rebekah said, oh no, this isn't it. This isn't what you wanted. And later, Isaac did bless Jacob and said, don't take a wife from these Canaanite women. And Esau saw that the Canaanite wives displeased Rebekah and Jacob, so he married some. That's the guy she's propping up.
And pure trickery, his brother took the blessing of heaven and earth that should have been his. His brother would have power over others.
You see, I'm not putting words in her mouth. This is where she is mistaken. She's choosing the wrong side. She's acting like God didn't know what he was doing.
In with the east and west of the beasts of the earth. There's also Esau's Blessing, because Isaac did bless Esau, but he couldn't give him the main blessing that Jacob tricked him out of, I guess you could call it. And in that blessing, it says, but when you decide to break free, you will shake his yoke from your neck. These were the only words of blessing the father had left to give his son. The happy blessings were stolen away by his brother. In a moment of deceit and pure trickery, his brother took the blessing of heaven and earth that should have been his. His brother would have power over others.
Who did God promise it to? We're going to look at the Bible scripture, so get it in your mind right now. Who did God promise it to?
Jacob had his father's blessing. All that was left for Esau would be toil and hardship from the earth and heaven, along with constant anger and fighting. It's not much of a blessing, in my opinion, except that the last phrase brings a twist of fate. Here's how the Bible records Isaac's blessing to Esau. It's in the book of Genesis 27. Finally, his father Isaac said to him, you will live away from the richness of the earth and away from the dew of heaven above. You will live by your sword and you will serve your brother. But when you decide to break free, you will shake his yoke from your neck. And do you think maybe today that he's shaking the yoke from his neck? Because the people that are part of the family of Esau definitely do not reap the riches of the earth, because they don't till the earth. They get other people to do it for them. They've always been the middleman. And they've learnt to shake that yoke now and maybe possibly put that yoke of,
Okay, well, we'll go back and give that another try as she goes on. Let's just look up the Bible verses here. You guys know that book of Romans, it's right after the book of Acts in the New Testament. Just at the end of the Gospels, it's one away. If God was ever going to speak out, he'd do it in the scriptures. He'd make it clear. Who did he like? Children of the flesh or the children of promise? For not all who are descended from Israel belong to Israel, and not all are the children of Abraham because they are his offspring, but through Isaac shall your offspring be named, singular. And later, they use that as to, one Jesus, offspring, singular. This means that it is not the children of the flesh who are the children of God, but the children of promise are counted as offspring. And that would most definitely be Jacob. For this is what the promise said, about this time next year I will return and Sarah shall have a son. And not only so, but also when Rebekah had conceived children by one man, patriarch, our forefather Isaac, though they were not yet born and had done nothing either good or bad, in order that God's purpose of election might continue. Not because of works. Everybody knows that. And that's part of what they love. But now, well, any other way of Jacob being the man, except for it's God's promise and blessing to Jacob and Rebekah, just like Abraham and Sarah. Because of him who calls. She was told, the unblessed will serve the younger, the older will serve the younger, as it is written, Jacob I loved, but Esau I hated. Hated. We see that word. It's going to be this, it's the root of the word. We're supposed to be good to those that hate us now. Where either he will hate the one and love the other. You are going to be hated by all people. How do you ever feel hated by a lot of people? Because of Jesus? Not because, you are sniffing silver paint on the street corners or something, These people hate him. Evil hates the light. And God, before they were born, he knew that one was going to be of the promise. He knew that maybe even in your family, you're of the promise, but your sister is not. You're of the promise, and you and your sister are, but your mom isn't. Never got down on her knees and confessed that Jesus Christ was Lord. Believed in her heart and confessed with her mouth. It happens. It's not of him that willeth or him that runneth, but of God who shows the mercy. Pretty sure. We have to realize who gave them the spirit of stupor. Who wrote this book? I have got to keep going. This was all just me. I got to be whipped through these tabs. We can make about this later, but the thing is, you've been either adopted or passed over in this whole who's being, because many are called, few are chosen. Their seeds get planted along the road, among the thorns, in the rocks, and on good ground. We're all working out our own salvation with fear and trembling by doing what we need to do. And what I wanted to, I think I put it in a poem or in the thumbnail, something about being uncovered and covered. Maybe it's even in the title. Because as much as I want women to cover, their hair, women must, by necessity, be able to see by men's example that they're covered by the Lord. We all have our covering. We all are in subjection, in order. We all have our head, which is why we uncover our head when we pray. There's a lot of different things, but we have to get to some of these other things. We'll come back to that one. There's this one too. Oh, the Flowbots. Look, it's very rare that you can find one like this that is Creative Commons. I think this is worth a listen. You know what I'm going to do while you guys are listening? I let this joint go out because I can only do a few puffs at a time.
Long for and don't know where it's ultimately going.
I can ride my bike with no handlebars, no handlebars.
You first hear the song and think nothing of it, right? Starting off by bragging about something small but impressive that still takes a certain amount of skill and balance to pull off. I mean, I ain't busting my ass to figure out how to do it, so shit's impressive to me.
Look at me, hands in the air like it's good to be alive, and I'm a famous rapper.
And as the verse starts, his first words immediately ring like a bratty kid pulling his mom's sleeve for attention and praise for something complicated they did. But then with the next line, he switches that imagery of the hands being in the air while riding the bike in front of his mom to being about the hands held high at his concerts, paralleling in both scenarios that feeling of accomplishment.
Then I'm a famous rapper, people in the past rock rookie D.
However, that following line already sets up an ambivalence towards the desire for that feeling, hinting at the myriad of conditions through one's life journey that can affect and mold the desire for that gratification. He quickly gets back on track, though, with listing a bunch of different stuff he's done with varying degrees of importance.
I can show you how to scratch a record. I can take apart the remote control, but I can almost put it back together.
And again, up front, the song doesn't directly feel political or anything. It's just this slice of life song about this quirky white dude telling you all the quirky stuff he's done in his life.
Me and my friends are platypus. I can tell you about Leif Erikson. I know all the words to De Colores, and I'm proud to be an American.
However, as the goals get more complex and bigger in scope, the delivery of the lyrics goes from that quirky, fun sense of pride feel to a more sneering, arrogant, headstrong one.
I can make new antibiotics. I can make computers survive aquatic conditions. I know how to run the business. I can make you want to buy a product.
And as the music is building, these accomplishments start to feel a bit morally contentious.
I see the drinks that control the system. I can do it with no resistance.
I'm going to have to just put the conjecture out there that this man basically watched my video that I made about 4 years ago about this song. And that was even before the you know what ved.
With the microphone.
Because he brings up how he understands the mechanics of the kind of power he wants, and how he has the knowledge and resources to manipulate things in his favor. Which, could be a good thing if you care about materially improving the lives of all people, but as you may know about anyone who seeks absolute power, that's not exactly a guarantee.
And I just took the atom of a molecule, of a molecule, of a molecule.
And right before the solo break, you get one brag that has a super ambiguous feel to it when you take into consideration the way the potential of a discovery like that has been used. On one hand, it's a testament to humanity's inventiveness, the discovery of new energy that can be of benefit to all mankind, to make everyday life more efficient and speeding us along the path to future technologies to make for a better world. On the other hand,
Yeah, of course, compared to this guy, I totally sucked.
yeah, that's got to be usually what it's used for, isn't it?
See, he's cool.
So when it gets to this line about his cause being noble, it was always deeply affecting to me. Because you didn't think two ways about the same guy who was accomplishing goals earlier in the song, right? Heck, you probably identified with him. But then having that snap moment where you started going down this power-hungry road, and then hearing him being still so sure that he's a good guy, it reminds you how human everyone is, including the people who do in life. Because it's like, of course you think your cause is noble. No one ever assumes they're the bad guys, or else they wouldn't feel justified in what they were doing in the first place. But when you throw having access to power into the mix, and if no one is above you who'd be capable of making it so you have to grapple with the moral validity of your decisions, who's to say your decisions and actions are any less good than the morally uncomplicated way you deem them to be? So if you're the one on top, you get to set the table of what good is, who's important to help, and who can be considered expendable. Whoa, that line certainly hits a little harder these days, doesn't it? Because, man, it sure is disheartening to know that there really are rich people who absolutely have the resources to get people vaccines in other countries, but refuse to do so because they're a selfish asshole who cares more about increasing profits.
Okay, here's another way that we divert Mr. Funny Man and me. Because he's all into the vaccinator thing. He can be morally outraged, and I'm morally outraged, but the Flowbots were doing a little bit of a comeback, and I was living around Denver at the time, so I heard of them.
Shares for your company than the survival of the human race, Bill Gates. And yeah, I said it. I ain't letting that shit he tried to pull during the pandemic slide. We're in the midst of a goddamn world-ending event, and this motherfucker gonna say, "Oh well, hold on now. We can't just get."
I do believe we are in the middle of a world-ending event. It's talked about in the Bible.
A patented formula for a vaccine to these brown people. They probably don't have the proper factories for it. So let's just let American companies do as much as the rational market demands. And when the American companies are done, then the surplus can trickle down to the rest of the and get the fuck out of here with that shit. Because as it turned out, those brown people do have the proper factories and would know the protocol of how to provide the proper conditions for creating the vaccine if, you just emailed it to them. So please, quit acting like you're not just trying to make another monopoly on a patent, just like you once tried to do in computer technology. I mean, seriously, can we stop playing around with risking civilizational collapse just so a handful of companies can increase their fucking profit shares? For fuck's sake, it's not the 90s anymore. We see what you're doing in real time, asshole. But on a lighter note, if we can get back to talking about flow for a second, there's actually a part I really like where he does a deceptive rhyming cadence right at the tail end of the last verse. See, you may have thought the rhyme ended on the phrase just because I don't like them, and the and is just the start of the next phrase. But when you hear the final line, the last word recontextualizes the stressed and as now retroactively part of the rhyme scheme. It's a cool little rhythmic stress that messes with your ear on where exactly the rhyme lands. It serves as a percussive bump that leads into the final hook, which contains lyrics that heighten the escalation to a fever pitch.
Because I can end the planet in a holocaust, Full transformation from the playful arrogance in the beginning into full-on ego trip with completely unchecked power by the end. Capping things off with the unfortunate logical conclusion of this path. Right before the coda at the tail of the song.
The innocent lyrics now a haunting reminder of the dark outcome that sprung from the fulfilled potential of a person who started their journey off doing something so innocuous. It's a somber tale about our capability as human beings, at once celebrating the ingenuity of mankind while also deconstructing how, unfortunately, it's the selfish tendencies within us that frequently guide that potential, which often leads to tragic results. On his inspiration for writing the song, the MC Johnny 5 said, "It is tragic to me that the appetite for military innovation is endless. But when it comes to taking on a project like ending world hunger, it's seen as outlandish. It's not treated with the same seriousness. That the human race is filled with so much creativity and bursts of innovation, but all it's often used for is to oppress and destroy people." And for how incredibly succinct he made that point with this song, I gotta give this my break the scale 6 out of 5 rating. This track is virtually perfect and all that, but you know, I'm not gonna lie, all this stuff was like super emotionally draining to think about. I'm like, I gotta like zone out and just play some video games for a couple hours and just not think about this stuff.
Dang, dude, go video game it? You got to video game it? You know, if you can't, I guess that's what kind of guy, I guess if you've seen people ride a bike with no handlebars and you've never tried it, I mean, after a while, you quit doing it because it's like, why show off with something so easy? That's being lame, mini skinny Albert. We got other things coming on here. The theory of Christopher Columbus is way, way crazy. Always wrote in Spanish. Maybe because these guys are, you know, can prove now that there was a Cuba in Portugal, a Cuba, Portugal, that's claiming they're from him, and all of the scholars are agreeing that this is, you know, the whole, it's all made up. They made him up. They pull these things out of history. We'll talk about it later. I'm looking at Cuba here. Probably had it pulled up here. Possible birthplace. The Portuguese. Possible spy in Isabella's court. That's what they're saying. We're going backwards now. I don't know. Should I get in the planet in a Holocaust? This seems lame. We're going to look at it anyway, I guess. Here's Philadelphia. Remember we were just looking at their drug people? They're selling drugs on the streets there. We saw them selling heroin and shooting it up right in front of cops last night on the news. Those must be the newsboys. You ever hear of those guys? Canal Street. Nice. That's a big picture. Hey, this is a good page. What's this guy doing here? Doesn't look like they use this rail, does it? Is that that's a curb? He's on the sidewalk. Man, that guy's worse driver than me. It's 11 o'clock in the city. Lots of wires. Hey, I like this page. Hope this one gets big. Look, they're still selling poison. I thought that was Coca-Cola, but it's something Brothers. I'm not sure. But the world was all filled up and busy back then. It took a long time for these cities to get repopulated. I'm going to leave it here. We might go back and look at some more, but I got this one pulled up too. Hey, look, it's wash day. (1864). There's your Peach Tree Street, Atlanta, Georgia. Looks like that jailhouse or whatever has seen better days. It looks like it got a direct hit. Railroad tracks seem somewhat open, not too much. I don't know. Doesn't look like a lot of trains. They might just be moving in, but a good thing they got the door saved. That's a strong door. That's why you should go in a door if you ever hear the sirens go off for a tornado or a hurricane. This is a kit town, just like many downtowns, laid out to catch the sun. I'm going to go back to the top of that one. These are photos that show Atlanta. 1895. Oldest photos of Oregon. He wore a 10-gallon hat. Hey, look at that guy. Look at Oregon. Portland, Oregon, 1905, as far as the eye can see. I say they took it over from somebody that built it. Hi, I'm the postman. My name's Kevin Costner. Go see my movie. It's underrated. 1888, Randy. Okay, I'll look at it. Come on. That's it. That's firewood or something. Yeah. They had to burn steam in those plants. Windows, so they got good lighting in their docks. They need it. Look at this railroad, like a cog railroad or an aqueduct. Whatever that flowing water, whatever it is, with an angle that steep, you could generate a lot of energy in many different ways. These canals never change because God built them. I like to worship Jesus as God. I was looking up these people. Look at this Handbook of American Indians. I read it in here that the people were still living them. This is the 1911 Encyclopedia Britannica about cliff dwellings. A great deal of attention has been given to the North American cliff dwellings, particularly along the, flat earth nation that I declared last year. What a coincidence. Some of which are still used by Indians in 1911. Some of which are still used by Indians, not the Indians that are actually from India, but they're actually a lost tribe, just like the Puebloans and all those people are lost tribes, and we shouldn't try to emulate their cultures. They were lost before Judah even dreamed of being lost. So they're still out there. Tons of them. Because they quit once they found a few that they could market for tourists. There's one I've just never seen. It's a different little type, but I like it. It looks like they built it on top of something else that got hit before, you know. So third time's a charm, or third time's a blessed those who make it. Not going to open up any new tabs till I start going back. A very interesting picture, right? You'll have to admit. Sankawi, never heard of it. Maybe we'll look at it. But I was looking at this one in China. This is one behind it. It's a bigger one. These are like two separate villages. And the thing is that their ceilings are a little bit less than 2 meters. So that means the people must have been about 5, 7, somewhere in what we'd call average range today. Not too much different than what Asians, Occidentals, Oriental, whatever you want to, whatever is the, hey, look over here. I just saw something there. That's a body part or an old something. It's not an old tree. Look at it. Aqueduct, maybe? Is it hollow? I've seen those type before. Look at it. Runs right here. See any other ones? There's the apartments. Hey, I see a swastika. Not really. It's in China. But they didn't find it till like yesterday. I mean, 1984. That's when it was discovered. But they didn't really pop it out on the people. They can't figure out if it was 1,000 or 2,000 years ago because they can't, in their mind, they can't imagine historians adding 1,000 years. That's incredible. 117 caves and 350 rooms. Something they call a chieftain's palace, or it could just be a temple. 8 rooms supported by columns cut from rock. Wait, we already saw this one. We're almost, hey, look, something about the Yahoo caves in China. Hey, look, something else about Daniel Amos. Man, I listened to these guys in the 80s.
Things moving much too slow. There's no spaceman up above. We're still far from love. So very far from love. Thought by now we built a dome around the world, control the weather, and every house a picture phone, communicate a little better. But nothing ever changed. Replay, you're still acting strange. No way that I can see. This way we will be free. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and dodge. I thought by now I'd walk out. And ride a car without no tires. And never know about what I like. And made a new way out of wire. I thought by now we would never stay. I need a few instead of
It's the 80s. Where's my rocket pack? From Daniel Amos, one of the rock and roll bands I preferred back in the day. Daniel Amos. Because that we were mad. We wanted it. We were going like, it's the 80s, man. Since we were kids, we were seeing a lot of weird stuff. So we were back. Oh, that was my first one. I was looking up Tribe of Dan. Got nothing shorter? Demystify it, all right. You ever heard of any of these guys? Drinking Bros. No. Hope of Israel Worldwide.
Interesting, when you talk about the tribe of Dan, I think some people might be very surprised, people of Irish origin, that actually what is written in the
here we go. So here's what I don't like. No way.
Bible about the tribe of Dan actually refers to Dan. Because in Genesis chapter 49, verses 16 through 18, Jacob prophesied, he said, in the last days, meaning in our days, he says, in the last days, Dan shall judge his people as one of the tribes of Israel. And he also says, Dan shall be a serpent by the way, an adder in the path that bites the horse heel, so that the rider shall fall backward. I have waited for thy salvation, O Eternal. Now, brethren, all these three elements we've read are very relevant, very important, and prophetic of, as we said, in the last days, the descendants of Dan in the last days. Now, Dan shall judge his people as one of the tribes of Israel actually means that Dan has equal status, even though he was born to Bilhah, and she was a handmaid, as you remember, not a wife. So he still has equal status. According to Strong, judge can mean to rule or to strive as at law or plead the cause. And then we have this second element, that Dan shall be a serpent by the way. And that will be biting, the horse's heel, so the rider fall backward. And then we have the third element, I have waited for thy salvation, O Eternal. It is all very interesting, brethren, how all that has been and is being fulfilled in our day and our age.
Wrong. Let me get situated here. I was listening. Oh, I had this I want to look up and find it, but I have to remember where it is. First Chronicles. Sauls Genealogy repeated. So let's go back to 6. All right, stay with it now. Look, here's your descendants of Levi. I don't want to miss any. Wow, it starts there. Okay. So when we get to the tribes, here's your descendants of David, Solomon. Descendants of Judah, Simeon. You've heard of those guys. They actually conquered the land they were given. Reuben, the firstborn. He was talking about the one the girl that when Reuben, he had incest with one of his father's wives, and it was Rachel's handmaid. So, and she also was one who was not nice to Rachel. So they had that going on. I just thought I'd throw that in there about Reuben. A lot of people, wonder why the firstborn, with all of their descendants and laws of the firstborn, David wasn't there's a lot of ones that weren't the firstborn that, it's no guarantee, the first one, but they do mention Gog. Just had to put that in there. Descendants of Gad, half tribe of Manasseh, descendants of Levi, a lot of them. Descendants of Ishtar, descendants of Benjamin, descendants of Naphtali, not too many. Oh, it was Bilhah. Yeah, that was who Reuben shacked up with. Descendants of Manasseh, descendants of Ephraim. Now, these are what were considered the half tribes because they were Joseph's two sons. And the descendants of Asher and the descendants of Dan. No, wait, it's a genealogy of Saul. You see, there is no Dan. That was a little bit drawn out, but I hope equally as dramatic. Roll back through them again. I'll stop on the half tribe of Manasseh. Does it kind of imply it's Dan? Where are you, Dan? The members of the half tribe of Manasseh lived in the land. They were very numerous. From Bashan to Baal Hermon, Sinar, and Mount Hermon. These were the heads of their father's house: Epher, Ishai, Eliel, Azriel, Jeremiah, Hodoviah, and Jediel, mighty warriors, famous men, heads of their father's house. But they broke faith with the God of their fathers and whored after the gods of the peoples of the land, whom God had destroyed before them. So the God of Israel stirred up I haven't looked at this verse yet, but this more than likely will be Yahweh, Lord Jesus in the flesh, stirred up either an Elohim or a Pneuma. Let's end this suspense. I've got to know. Ruah, so it's the spirit. The spirit that is of Assyria, the God. So it's a double Elohe, the God of Israel. So the God of gods, it is. That's Jesus. Interesting. Half tribe. Scepter. Do not let the tribe of the family of the Kohathites. They're just bad. They were all bad. Tribe of Levi, the tribe of your father. A scepter, Israel. Reuben, the half of Reuben. And that should be like a comma. Half Manasseh, half the tribe, half Wow. Can of worms, anybody? Man. Well, I got to bring this back. I was so far away from what I consider home base of where I can see if I'm still checking in. This is hard, right? It's not just me. Any help? I keep forgetting my other camera is finally wore out. I got my money's worth out of that. Is Mr. Wiseup in the house? My man. Yes, he is. Hallelujah. You know, I'm going to put anybody wants to come in. If anybody wants to check in and say, hey, what's up? I just posted it, I do believe. So this was an interruption because of something somebody said.
So, you know, in type, we have a Danite, Samson, that he was from the tribe of Daniel, found in Judges chapter 13, verse 2. So in type, you know, Samson.
What's Dan doing in there? What is Dan even doing in there? That's where you lose me. That's where they lose me, man. Is it that hard? Where do they list what the foundations are in Revelation? It's near the end, I think. I already got Revelation pulled up. Let's see, heaven and earth. Oh, here's the good part. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes. Yay, death shall be no more. Yeehaw. See, we didn't make that first resurrection. They don't have to fear the second death. We have to fear God, keep his commandments. All this is going to pass away just like it did for them. You know, the New Jerusalem, gates. Here they are, the gates foundation. The wall is big. 12,000 stadia. Man. And here's your chrysolite, topaz, chrysoprase, jacinth, amethyst, 12 pearls. Where's the list of the people that make the foundation? Come on. I thought it was right there. Did anybody put it in does anybody know? Or are we going to look it up? Let's look it up. Go. 21, 22, how'd I miss it? That's not it. $11. Well, I know I was studying it last night. Look at there was a great earthquake and a tenth of the city fell. 7,000 people. I wonder if that was in San Francisco. 16, 18. I'm going to give up on this if this isn't it. Nope, that's not it. But it does have the glittering sword and another earthquake. So great an earthquake. So we know what shook some of those things just to rubble during Armageddon.
That night did judge and avenge his people against the Philistines. It's all described in Judges chapter 13 through 16. And Samson's guerrilla tactics of warfare were successful for the small against the big and the few against the many.
Let's just, not good podcast. Was that Tommy?
No, I was talking to my mom.
Okay.
Because.
Oh, I'm live here, so don't share anything. I'm going to play this. Oh, wait.
The tribe of Dan, also sometimes spelled as Dan, was one of the tribes of Israel. They were allocated a coastal portion of land when the people of Israel entered the Promised Land, later moving northwards. Origin. According to the Torah, the tribe consisted of descendants of Dan, a son of Jacob and Bilhah, Rachel's maidservant. In the biblical account, Dan is one of the two children of Bilhah, the handmaid of Jacob's wife Rachel, the other child of Bilhah being Naphtali. Scholars see this as indicating that the authors saw Dan and Naphtali as being not of entirely Israelite origin. Some have noted that the territory of the handmaid tribes happens to be the territory closest to the north and eastern borders of Canaan, thus exposing them to Assyria and Aram. However, other tribes born to wives, including the firstborn Reuben, were also included on the eastern outskirts and immediately adjacent to Israel's more traditional enemies at the time of their entry to Canaan, the Moabites and Ammonites. Territory. According to the Hebrew Bible, following the completion of the conquest of Canaan by the Israelite tribes after about 1200 BCE, Joshua allocated the land among the 12 tribes. Dan was the last tribe to receive its territorial inheritance. According to the biblical narrative, the land originally allocated to Dan was a small enclave in the central coastal area of Canaan, between Judah, Benjamin, Ephraim, and
Now that's an
Philistine.
interesting map that
On the
she's
north, the
talking
territory
about.
of Dan ended opposite Joppa, the modern Jaffa. This territory,
Is that-
not very extensive
doesn't look the
originally,
same.
was soon diminished by its dangerous neighbors, the Philistines. The tribe was only able to camp in the hill country overlooking the Sorek Valley, the camp location becoming known as Maheni Dan. The region they were trying to settle extended south into the Shephelah in the area of Timnah. As a result, the modern state of Israel refers to the region as Gush Dan. However, as a consequence of the pressure from the Philistines, the tribe abandoned hopes of settling near the central coast, instead migrating to the north of Philistine territory, and after conquering Laish, refounded it as their capital. History. In the biblical census of the Book of Numbers, the tribe of Dan is portrayed as the second largest Israelite tribe. Some textual scholars regard the census as being from the priestly source, dating it to around the 7th century BC, and more likely to reflect the biases of its authors, though this still implies that Dan was one of the largest tribes at a point fresh to the memories of the 7th century BC. In the Blessing of Moses, which some textual scholars regard as dating from only slightly earlier than the Deuteronomist, in Moses' blessing Dan is prophesied to leap from Bashan. Scholars are uncertain why this should be, since the tribe did not live in the Bashan plain, east of the Jordan. From after the conquest of the land by Joshua until the formation of the first kingdom of Israel and c. 1050 BC, the tribe of Dan was a part of a loose confederation of Israelite tribes. No central government existed. Times of crisis, the people were led by ad hoc leaders known as judges. The most celebrated Danite was Samson. Fnina Galpa's fellow sees similarities between the story of Samson and Denian tribal legends. With the growth of the threat from Philistine incursions, the Israelite tribes decided to form a strong centralized monarchy to meet the challenge, and the tribe of Dan joined the new kingdom with Saul as the first king.
Did anybody see any mountains, what you would call mountains, anywhere in what they call Israel? I mean, really. Now, we've seen mountains, and we know what they look like. I don't think 3,500 feet is a mountain. That's not even a mile high. So Dan is supposed to be driven up into the mountains. This is supposed to be what they say is he was going to be over here. These are mountains. They're only little forest, all not much old growth because it's a desert. But maybe it had some. Let's go back to the Old Testament. Let's see here. You know, it only takes two after the book of Joshua, you know, when they chose to serve the Lord and double-crossed him again. Joshua died. Well, let's see what happened in Dan. The first chapter. What did Dan do? See, everybody else, Naphtali didn't drive out the inhabitants. Asher did not drive out the inhabitants. Zebulun did not. They were given the land, but they were too afraid to, you know, they didn't believe that one could chase 1,000 and two 10,000. So they just, you know, Judah did, but Manasseh didn't. Now, Dan, verse 34, the Amorites pressed the people of Dan back into the hill country, for they did not allow them to come down to the plains. The Amorites persisted in dwelling in Mount Heres in Ahilan, in the Shahalabim. But the hand of the house of Joseph rested heavily on them, and they became subject to forced labor. And the border of the Amorites ran from the ascent of the Akarabim from Silla and upward. Not that great, you know, for, I mean, all of the great praise that these people love to heap on them. Like Dan this, Dan that. Where do you find it in the Bible? Now there are this one here. We're live. Now where was that one that said, "Are they the Antichrist"? Remember that one? Well, here's one. Rabbi Tovia Singer. Are you going to talk?
So what happens instead of counting Joseph, it's Manasseh and Ephraim as two sons, and therefore you supply the missing number. The question is, why would Dan be absent from those who are present at the end of days? So the first point is that this is factually incorrect, because if you look at the book of Ezekiel, particularly at the end of Ezekiel, chapter 45 through 48, all the tribes, then included, are present. So Revelation, whoever wrote it, someone named who says his name is John, is factually incorrect. Now there is, yes, Dan will be there. Not only that, apparently it seems that Dan was the first to be discovered because the Jews of Ethiopia, what are called the Philashan Jews, trace their heritage, their connection to Jewish people, specifically from the tribe of Dan.
Notice how this lying son of, they belong to the synagogue of Satan. That's what the book of John calls them. So I'm with the book of John on that. And I don't want to get into it. Oh, here's a biblical secret. Well, where's that Antichrist? I got to look this up. I wonder what Dr. Heiser says. Did you say anything about the tribe of Dan, Dr. Heiser? We got to keep going. What is the foundation of the earth in Revelation? The Amorites pressed to the people of Dan. It just seems that they, I showed you in the book of Chronicles, First Chronicles, they're not mentioned. And it says, in the one last thing before I get off of it, I guess, is probably where everybody else was going. The blessings his sons get, Jacob gets a good long one. Gad. Now here's Dan's. Dan shall judge his people as one of the tribes. Nobody else gets that, as a tribe. It's not even tribe in their thing anymore. It's just you're this. But Dan will judge his people as one of the tribes of Israel. I'm trying to think ahead, and that's my problem. Of Israel, the tribes as one. It has become like one of us. If Samson cut his hair, he wouldn't, he'd be like any other man. So far, the connection is Judges 17 became to him like one of his sons. David's table. David sat at Saul's table as one of his sons. I don't know who the other one was. Let's see, but that's 12 out of almost 1,000. And the New American Standard has many translations of it with this prefix and suffix. Altogether, a piece, one and on another, one another, 1/10 for each, together, unit, united. Prefix, suffix, you can do a lot with a word. Now, Song of Deborah it rings a bell that we should mention. It has some weird stuff too about Dan. My sister's name is Deborah. I try hard to think of a way to honor her, probably by just being quiet. No, it was in Judges 5. All right, this song, because they were happy that day. Hero kings give ear. The heavens dropped water. Yes, the clouds dropped water. The mountains quaked before the Lord. And, you know, remember Jael? Woo! She was taking care of business that day. Deborah, she said, I'll go. If Baruch goes, then I'll go. And they said, let's go. Baruch said, if she goes, I go. And so they went. They pulled it off. Now, here's another interesting one before we get down to Dan. Should we do Dan first or find him later? I'll probably forget one or the other. So here's Reuben, Zebulun, Benjamin. They all gathered together. You know, great searchings of the heart. Now, here's not that good for Reuben, right? Why did you sit still among the sheepfolds to hear the whistling of the flocks? It's not all good. Remember, he fooled around with his dad's concubine, Rachel's handmaiden, But Reuben, among the clans of Reuben, there were great searchings of the heart. Gilead stayed behind on the Jordan. And Dan, why did he stay with the ships? That's what Deborah wanted to know. Archer sat still at the coast of the sea. Asher, I'm sorry. Sorry, Archer. Zebulun is a people who risk their lives unto death. Naphtali too, on the heights of the field. You know, we'll get to see it all as it flashes before our eyes, as we all take turns knowing every thought and deed. Water loses no memory, and we have eternity.
Hello everybody, and welcome to Ancient Architects. Please subscribe now to get the latest ancient history news and independent research from around the world.
Look at that. He does this stuff from around the world, and these are old body parts that they just found, set upright, backfilled, and they could build temples of unhewn stone. Go. Tons of mysteries on Unsolved Mysteries. And look at what they showed 10 days ago. This is all relatively new stuff. Giyahu's cave. Anybody? Anybody? Yeah. Who? Yeah. He. 117 caves, 350 chambers. Look, there's the other one that I didn't get to show you. I think I have a picture of it. But you can tell they gather the water.
This site is carved out of solid granite and was only discovered in 1984. They are a true mystery of the ancient world because experts have found no datable archaeological evidence at the site, and it's never been mentioned in any historical literature.
You know he's smart because he's got an accent, right? Oh, Barbie me shrimp. Cracky. Releasing.
Many scholars have stated their case for who they believe carved the site and also what its purpose was.
It looks like where I used to buy tickets to go into the movie. And I could, this was a small one that they divided into two different theaters. But that's good work if that's really granted.
Some say it was a village or granary built in the Tang dynasty between 618 and 907 AD. But some say
618? He said AD. Yeah, AD. 618. That's 1618 to me. And I believe it. I think that just happened. Something happened. That'd be not Armageddon, but a reaping. Maybe that put because wouldn't this bush be about that big if something big happened, and a reset was as recent as what they say was World War II or World War I? Oh, they just decided to let the tree grow to that length. It wouldn't break the rocks eventually. I know trees break rocks. I'm not going to tell you that paper covers.
It was a garrison for soldiers during the Han Dynasty, sometime between 202 BC and 220 AD. There is a theory it was a complex built by outlaws on the run or a tribe of people during the Lao Dynasty.
I'm thinking Robin Hood or maybe David hiding from Saul.
916 and 1125 AD. So there is no academic consensus, and that's because of the reasons stated. A lack of datable archaeology.
I hit the wrong subscriptions.
Sweet, sweet love, sweet, sweet love. In case you haven't heard, in case you haven't heard, it's sweet, sweet love, sweet, sweet love. In case you haven't heard, in case you haven't heard, and it's a
haven't heard. It's his message from above. He's sharing all his love. It's a sweet, sweet word. It's sweet, sweet word. And it's all love. Yeah, it's all love. Sweet, sweet word. Sweet, sweet word. In case you haven't heard. In case you haven't heard. It's a sweet, sweet word. Sweet, sweet word. In case you haven't heard. In case you haven't heard. And it's a love. Yeah, it's a love. Yeah, it's a love. Yeah, it's a love. Sweet, sweet word. Sweet, sweet word. In case you haven't heard. In case you haven't heard. It's his message from above. He's sharing all his love. It's a sweet, sweet word. It's sweet, sweet word. And it's so love. And it's so love.
Eta, bueno. Now, the mass are believed to have been the originators of the Rh negative blood factor, the original genetic pool from which this factor came. While Rh negative are a small minority in the white and other races, the current mass still are over 33% Rh negative.
Poliki, eta astido, pues, aurrera egoten zara, kultura diferenteak eta ezberdinak ezagutzen duzuz,
Anyone who's taken a class on world politics or human geography will certainly be familiar with this particular group, as their reputation precedes them all around the world as the textbook definition of separatist, nationalist, secessionist. But just who are these little guys? Well, you wouldn't want to refer to them as little guys, not only due to the extreme inaccuracy of that term, but definitely because you really don't want to incur the wrath of the Basques. Also called Basques, but that's just the way I learned to say it. Believe it or not, the people group of the Basques are actually one of the oldest groups in Europe still around today, as I discussed in a video on the pre-Indo-Europeans. And although seemingly low in numbers, they have had an incalculable influence on
No, tell them why. Why? I'm going to steal the thunder here. This is what I found out, which I think I heard before, but I'm not sure. I think I did. I had to have. All of the royalty left in the world have the same blood type. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but its initials are RH negative.
Not only the history of Europe, but the entire world. In today's video, let's briefly have a look at the genesis and evolution of the Basques as a nation over the millennia, their struggles in Europe, as well as their contributions to world history, but particularly that of Latin America. Those in Latin America, and especially Spain, can easily recognize a Basque surname when compared to that of Castilian, Catalan, or Galician individuals. And although Basque has certainly influenced and slowly crept into the vernacular of modern Spanish, names included, there are many easy ways to tell them apart. Although the Basques do have an entirely different linguistic origin, they also share a considerable amount of genetics with the neighboring Italic peoples, such as the Spanish and French, including belonging almost exclusively to the Western haplogroup R1b, which may or may not be the result of intermixing, although it is clear that Basques can be distinguished.
Well, if it's not, may or may not be, what did they do? Breed by just like, let's snuggle. Come on.
From other Europeans by certain genetic strains that predate the Indo-European migration from the Eurasian steppes. Modern Basque history as an autonomous ethnic nation probably starts sometime after the fall of the Western Roman Empire, when the Basques found themselves to be independent for the first time in 600 years, and various Basque tribes were able to repel the Visigoths.
That's just complete speculation, Viking. You know, everybody thinks they're the badass that took down Rome. God's in charge.
Goths and other Germanic invaders from the north, as well as repelling the Islamic Moorish armies 100 years
later. The Hun. Watch out for the Hun.
Later, even after the entirety of the Iberian Peninsula had been conquered, the Basques, who by this time had already converted to Christianity en masse, like most other former Romans at this point.
Right, at this point, under Queen Jezebella, you know, you had one choice. You convert to what they called Christianity, or you get burned alive.
Allied themselves with the Crown of Castile, Aragon, and Portugal in order to drive off the more dire threat of Moors in the south. Although in the following few hundred years, the southern Basques were absorbed into Castile, which would later evolve into the Spanish Empire as we know it today, while the smaller northern half would eventually be annexed by the French a few centuries later. Unlike most conquered peoples, the Basques did not simply drop their previous culture and language and assimilate into the dominant population, that being the Castilians, and stubbornly held on to their culture until the monumental discovery of the New World launched Spain into its position as the world's dominant power for the first time.
Yeah, you know, that's supposed to be the Nina on the left, the Pinta on the right, the Santa Maria on the, that's supposed to not be the Roth side, Red Cross on the front.
In history. Although the Basques already had a reputation as troublemakers, they still had the same rights as any other ethnic group in the empire, and many of the first explorers, navigators, sailors, traders, soldiers, and conquistadors.
Remember what Cortez said to Montezuma? Hi, give us all the gold you have and we might not kill you, but they lied, they killed him anyway.
Was employed by the Spanish Armada that made the trek to the New World were Basque ancestry.
But that's not the only thing that's unique about the Basque.
See, here's what I told you earlier about the volume on this thing. I'm glad I'm not asleep at the switch.
Basque. The Basque turned out to also be unique in terms of blood. The Basque people,
Well, you know, they were eating that blood when I first showed you that part at the end. They eat blood. That's gross.
currently inhabit the areas surrounding the Pyrenees Mountains, but exactly who are the Basque and where did they come from? I decided that a great place to find out is the University of Nevada, since it houses the Center for Basque Studies. This organization is primarily a research center that conducts...
Somebody told them to all dress this way and that you like accordions and eat blood. And you're special. You're poor, but you're special. And they said, special? Yeah, special ed.
And publishes on Basque-related topics such as anthropology, history, cultural studies, etc.
Let's talk more about the Basque people. I'm kind of fascinated. This kind of reminds me of Jewish people. No, I'm not at all implying that there's any connection at all between Jewish people and Basque people as far as DNA goes. Not implying that. I'm not here to say that the Basque people are a lost tribe of Israel, one of the 12 tribes. I'm not saying that.
You know what they all say? They all want to take it to Atlantis. But that's what you're thinking. If that's what you're thinking, open your eyes.
Put this down, actually. I don't need that. But ultimately, the way I feel is I feel that there definitely are undeniable connections between Basque people and Jewish people. And the fact that we have modern day nations that have their own histories, but then have people that were there way before, like the fact that Jewish people were already in that region of Iran, Iraq, Israel, Palestine, they were already there long ago. And then we can say, well, kind of
like the Mormons and the Hopi Indians.
Same way with the Basque people, that they've been there before history really existed. The difference being, though, that the Jews were expelled from place to place to place. Whereas the Basque people, it's like they've just stayed there. And that's one of the reasons I'm fascinated by them, is because you don't hear much about Basque people. So, but they are their own ethnic group with their own language and their own history.
Yeah, but they all came from the same 8 people out of Noah's Ark. Remember Noah, the covenant keeper?
That has been around forever.
Well, that's, maybe forever is not as long as it used to be.
I think it is interesting. Maybe what would be fun is if we were to carry on this conversation a little bit more as far as what are more ways that Jewish people and Basque people are alike.
Basque, RH negative. Got it.
That's why it's dangerous when an RH negative woman becomes pregnant with an RH positive baby. If the baby's red blood cells get into the mother's bloodstream, her immune system will consider them foreign invaders and create antibodies to destroy them. These antibodies can also cross the placenta and attack the fetus, with terrible consequences like permanent brain damage and even death. This immune reaction begins during a mother's first pregnancy, but is only completed after the baby is born. That's why first babies are typically spared from RH disease. They're already born by the time the mother's immune system has time to react. But an immune system never forgets, leaving all future RH positive babies at risk of getting RH disease.
RH negative people and anemia is not a subject that's widely discussed. And why is that? Because RH negative people have copper blood, not iron blood. And that's something that is a very basic fact that you can Google. In fact, it's on Wikipedia. If you look up are RH negative people copper blooded, you'll come up with a list of different websites, including Wikipedia, at least last time I checked, that confirms that RH negative people have a copper base to their blood instead of an iron base. Now, there's a couple simple questions that most people ask when they find this out. Does that mean we don't have iron in our blood? No. That means that we have iron in our blood, but it is not the base metal, which means we have much less iron in our blood than an Rh positive. So you can be A negative or positive, B negative or positive, AB negative or positive, or O positive or negative. And then there's also O.
And people, all of this is since, like around World War I that they discovered it. That's why they all of a sudden rushed out. You got to get a marriage license. We got to do blood tests. We got to know. Because all this is new. They didn't know that hemophilia skipped a generation, which is why the royal families had to bring in some fresh blood.
No. So Rh negative people, when they are told that they are anemic, they are often given iron pills, or they're told to supplement their diet with high iron content foods. And then they don't get better. And it mystifies a lot of people. And the reason for that is because iron can't fix the anemia if the anemia is a copper deficiency. So this is my own experience. When I was 8 years old, I was very, very sick as a child. My parents took me to 3 of the top doctors in the United States. And all 3 of them, I was diagnosed with MCS, fibromyalgia, early onset arthritis, and severe anemia. All 3 of them diagnosed me with these 4 things. And one of the things that puzzled them the most was I had all the symptoms of someone who was severely anemic, but my iron levels were fairly normal. Like they were just below normal. And they couldn't figure it out. I even went to see doctors when I was 14 and 15, and the tests were the same. So all of my symptoms were still severely anemic, but my iron tests showed that I was just below normal. So when you are just below normal in iron, you're supposed to have very slight symptoms of anemia, like very, very mild, right? Not severe, not anywhere close to severe. So it was puzzling. And it wasn't until 2 years ago when I did a lot of research on blood where I found out that Rh negative people are actually copper blood, like that's our base metal. And right after that, I started taking copper supplements, and all of a sudden, I could drive again. I could actually work a full-time job. And it was crazy to me how simple the answer was. But because the fact that Rh negative people have a copper base is not put in any medical textbook that a doctor studies to get his degree. So it's not something that most Western medical doctors are going to be highly aware of, which is why nobody could figure it out for me for my entire life.
In the study of blood types, Rh factor is also called rhesus factor because it was first discovered in the blood of rhesus monkeys. There are 612 primate species and subspecies recognized by the International Union for Conservation of Nature, the IUCN, and not one has Rh negative blood. If mankind evolved from the same African ancestor, their blood would be compatible, but it's not. Nearly 85% of all human beings have Rh positive blood. Yet mankind.
Let's see that. That's what he read here. But it is not rhesus negative blood type. Suddenly appears 35,000 years ago in the Cro-Magnon. And I'm wondering if anybody can help me find out, are those the beasts of the field? The ones that were driven out? You know, because there's so many different types of men, mankind, Adams, and then other words for men also, that all have the breath of life in them. And I'm looking, and I believe that all of these nations can be saved in Abraham if they are, whatever we find out, what happened to our blood types, it doesn't matter. We're human. We're human. I want your spirit to bear witness to that. We are human and we need Jesus to be saved.
Evolved from the same African ancestor, their blood would be compatible, but it's not. Nearly 85% of all human beings have Rh positive blood, yet all royal families have Rh negative blood. Where did the Rh negatives come from? Why does the body of an Rh negative mother carrying an Rh positive child reject her own offspring?
I received an email from a person who wants to remain anonymous. And this is what he said to me. He is a geneticist, a full-blown geneticist. And he says, "Dear Mr. Pye, I agree with your conclusions."
And I understand. I don't like having these put out without footnotes and things like that. And I know that people are going to make fun of the girl who talked about Wikipedia. But that's where the footnotes are listed. That's how you get to where you want to know things.
And will give you a few hints, if you wish, as a DNA deep throat. First, look up the huge discontinuities between man and the various apes for whole mitochondrial DNA, genes for the Rh factor, and human Y chromosomes, among others. Regarding number 3, the chromosomes, I refer you to K.D. Smith's 1987 study titled Repeated DNA Sequences of the Human Y Chromosome. It says most human Y chromosome sequences so far examined do not have homologs, which are similar sequences, on the Y chromosomes of other primates. Human female DNA does look somewhat ape-like, but not the male Y. This means that if we are a crossbred hybrid species, as you contend, meaning me, the cross had to be between a female ape-like creature, a creature of the earth, as the Sumerian said, and a male person from elsewhere, as I also contend. He goes on to say, what the evolutionists do is find certain genes which look very similar between man and ape, then they make a tree of descent while ignoring those huge impassable abysses of difference elsewhere. Also, by certain methods of DNA dating, one can tell that numerous genes have been recently added to the human genome. If workers in my field were to say such things openly, we would be ostracized, as I also contend, and forced to live in a tent. Any work along these lines would be rejected without any form of appeal. So what can we do? Sincerely, DNA Deep Throat.
And there was a migration that may have happened from the Berbers, because it is, haplogroup V is mainly present among the Berbers, people in Spain, Iberians, and then the Southern people. So there's a connection, and there must have been a Berber migration later on. And well, since the Sami are alone, I think the blood, the V people may have gotten it from the Basques and then spread elsewhere. I don't know.
European settlers or explorers, you would find the Basques not always leading the charge, but never too far behind, to say the least. The Basques had a relatively mundane life in Europe during this time, although over the years the Spanish and French governments became increasingly insistent on the assimilation of the Basque people. After the French Revolution, the French government became obsessed with absorbing all ethnic minorities.
Yeah, once they got the blood types or whatever they needed to keep the royals pure, they just said, you know what, Basques, suck it.
in the country and erasing or absorbing their cultures entirely. And this was the case with many groups such as the Occitanians in the south or the Normans in the north. And the Basques, although losing a considerable amount of autonomy, did fight to retain their language and identity with limited success. However, in the Americas, the Basques were thriving in New Spain, and in places like Chile, Mexico, and Colombia, the Basques were essentially living as kings, with Basques disproportionately represented in the upper class. Groups such as the Real Sociedad Vascongada de Amigos del País, or simply the Basque Society, were extremely influential among politicians and other citizens in New Spain of Basque ancestry, and dissent against the crown was growing overseas. The desire for independence in Spanish colonies in the Americas was primarily supported by Criollos, or American-born Spaniards, a large chunk of whom had full or partial Basque ancestry, and literally the most vital revolutionary in all of Spanish America, Simón Bolívar, was of Basque ancestry on his father's side, while his mother was of Canarian origin. Think of Bolivar as the George Washington of Latin America, leading the charge for independence across Hispanic America, becoming the first successful leader of a Latin American country, with the countries of Bolivia and the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela being named after Simón Bolivar, making them the only countries in the world with a name of Basque etymological origin. Others of the Basque ethnicity who were instrumental in various rebellions against the crown include Agustin Iturbide of Mexico, the man responsible for rallying the Mexican independence movement and briefly declaring himself as the first emperor of Mexico, as well as Rafael Urdaneta, president of Gran Colombia and close ally to Simón Bolivar. Although these revolutions were long after his time, the famed Marxist revolutionary Ernesto, better known as Che Guevara, was also of partial Basque ancestry.
When asked, I found that the majority of the Basque people themselves maintain that they came from Atlantica, a powerful maritime nation that sank into the Atlantic.
Here we go, right? This is where they always going to go. Ancient aliens. I'm not saying that we came from the Anunnaki and that Atlantis went away. Anything but it was Armageddon, and the Bible's true.
Ocean after a terrible cataclysm, and from which a few survivors reached the Bay of Biscay and the Pyrenees Mountains. This, they say, is not just mythology, but their true pre-European ancestry.
Well, what is a Basque? All we know for sure is what a Basque is not. Besides not being French or Spanish, a Basque is not Mediterranean, Alpine, Magyar, Celtic, Germanic, Semitic, nor Scandinavian. He isn't even there yet. Nobody knows who his ancestors were. According to him, Adam and Eve were pure Basque. And it's true that he's positioned something like the Red Indians in America. He's an Aboriginal. Before the other Europeans came along.
There's another ancient people who claim racial lineage from the mythical Atlanteans.
Irish?
The Berbers are currently located geographically around Mount Atlas, but inhabit much of North Africa long before the Arabs arrived. The Berbers are considered the aboriginals of the area, and their origins beyond that are not officially known. Here we have a population, many of whom have blue eyes and light hair, living in Northwest Africa of all places. And among some of the blonde tribes still living near the Atlas Mountains of Morocco, the percentage of Rh negative blood can reach 40%.
That's a Basque invention. So is whaling. Yes, the fantastic notion that the world's biggest creature could be hunted and harpooned from a boat. Actually dreamed up by the Basque sailors on this coast. Basque invents the berry all over again when he puts it on. There seems to be no end to the angles, no limit to the variations of individual fields.
We do in Spain, you know. My grandpa and grandpa, mother and father, we always do that. That's traditional.
But
pictures of my great grandmother in the same kitchen making morcillas. So I liked that aspect of it. Just do the same thing that they did when they first came over from the Basque Country.
Yeah, don't forget, you did hear that part that the Basque people are so proud that they were the first people to kill whales.
It's the blood sausage event, or the morcilla and bazaar dinner at the Basque Center. This is a fabulous weekend. We're going to make blood sausage each year. It's a long tradition. It's been going at least for 40 or 50 years. We roast and cook about 750 pounds of leeks and about 600 pounds of onions. And then
You know, people that wanted to go back to Egypt, they loved leeks and onions and couldn't. They thought the blood was so yummy. I'm sure that the Egyptians, from their bulls they sacrificed, gave them the blood. Here you go. We don't want it. Yummy.
ends up getting mixed with rice and beef blood and then put into a casing and cooked again.
I remember growing up as a kid, my dad would always bring the morcillas home and then he'd cook them, and the smell would permeate through the house for, I swear, weeks at a time. And it's just a memory.
In the Basque Country, they'll tell you that they've made them all their life, and they mainly are vegetable, so they're very nourishing for the soul and also physically.
This comes from the old country, in the Basque Country, when there was zero waste from the animal. So they would oftentimes use all parts of the body, brains, lungs, to make blood sausage as well.
These sausages are special to the Basque community, and it's fun to get together and make it all for the whole community. I mean, this is a lot of work to do at home. So if you get together and do it, it's fun.
It's agriculture. It's important. And it's going to continue doing it. So that makes me feel good.
Man, I'm telling you, the Basque blood and stuff, that's weird, right? Here's that cliff dwelling you were looking at. You know, you can do it because they know what tree rings look like. Unhewn stone. Probably a place they sent smoke signals, huh? Looks like an old sculpture, right? Anybody? Anybody think that looks like a sculpture? Like a face? Old fort ruin. That looks like it'd be nice and cool. Put a little roof on that. Get the heat circulated. That's a Francis Canyon. Pueblito. Oh, Pueblito. You'll grow up to be a pueblo someday. Wonder if that picture gets big. I guess so. That'd be dry. You can stay dry in there. What's going on here? Just find a cavity, a sinus in the body. Body part. You can date that wood. That's wood, not petrified, because wood doesn't petrify once it's You know, how is that going to happen? Look at that flat earth map. That's the flag of the Navajo Nation. They took the whole Cherokee Nation. Put us on this reservation. This is an old one. Man, that's a mile high. I don't see it. Is that it? Is it the mountain? They're living up there in the cliff dwelling? Is that it? Where is it? That's the peak. There's the summit of Aztec Peak. Thought we were going to see some cliff dwelling. Here's the Salmon ruins. They say this is about a little over 1,000 years old. Prove it. That's a nice little design they got going there, you know. Unhewn stone. Find it in the wall, prop it up, keep it warm. Vent that fire, get clean water, live to live another day. Hey, there's a Kiva water place just like at Mesa Verde. You could, if nobody knows what they do in those Kivas. It's not for water. Another flat earth map. Another flat earth map. Twins. Twins everywhere. Everywhere with the twins. Marble Spring sounds cool. Look, that's in Tennessee. Man, this guy has Sevierville named after him, which has one of my favorite stores. I wonder if they have anything on sale. Oh, man, I probably don't like this guy. But he has a store called Smoky Mountain Knife Works. And what? You don't spell mountain like mutton? Who would have thought it? But it's in Sevierville in the Smoky Mountains. And, you know, if anybody needs a good knife, here's a good chance to get it. No thanks. Now, here's a really good brand. Let's see what their most expensive Gerber is. Yow. That's some pretty, you know, that's not that bad, I guess. Pretty pricey. I actually have this one. Let's look at some more. I wonder what they have on special. What? Felt like I was still on the expensive page. I'll look at the store. The world's largest knife store, and it is. We just wanted to look at the store, if you don't mind. We can't afford your fancy knives. So here it is. Look at that. I told you. That's the place to go if you're looking for bargains on your cutlery. You could spend a day in there, and I wanted to. They had to drag me out. What? Oh, you wanted guns? I don't know. I'm not promoting you go get a gun there, but if you're near Sevierville, you should check it out. Remember these cliff dwellings? I really wanted you to make a note that some of which were still used by Indians as of 1911. Volume 6 in your cliff dwellings. Here's your culture. Here's what they said about catacombs. They had tons of Christian tomb architects sank into utter insignificance, and the expanse of wasted Campagna now offered room enough to bury the new bodies. What are they talking about? That must have been where they were still coming out of their caves. Who knows how long they wanted to stay settled in there close to where they knew was safe during the 1,000 years, bringing in all the usual suspects, aren't they? 1911. Here's a picture from 1911 of a cemetery. I think they dug up these bones and buried them under Paris. 6 million bones under Paris. What is this anyway? What are we looking at? Stuff from catacombs from 1911. No, don't worry. We won't read the names. You made sure of that. 1911 cover-ups. This is the biggest 1911 article I've ever seen. Probably. I've seen about 10 of them too. That's what they paint on the ceiling. It looks like the Good Shepherd. That's how you tell it's a Christian one, I think. Kind of looks Zodiac style, huh? I don't know. That's a very extensive plan of the catacombs of St. John in Syracuse. We could just go crazy. Did you know that the Syracuse tree is highly valued in Illuminati? Or is it the sycamore tree? Could be thinking of the sycamore. Syracuse is big, though, in Greek, I think. Is it big in there? That's the Syracuse I was thinking of. But I thought it was a tree, or was that an academy, a grove of trees near Syracuse? Is that where all this started? We were going to look at these. Oregon in 1888. They sold you drugs with a weird kind of a G back then. They had the G right over here on this drugs. Must have fallen off here. That's a sorry looking mule. Oh no, where's the insurance company? Look at that. That's off the Oregon coast in 1891, everybody. That's got to be a body part. Body part, body part. That or a swimming turtle. Atlanta in the 1800s. Downtown Atlanta. This is taken from the insurance company, the Equitable, their building. And there's the Capitol in Washington, D.C. You can see it from Atlanta. Wait a minute, that can't be Atlanta. Just another Mudflood kit town. We've uncovered their mysteries. Why don't you just live it, love it, realize it was the Lord Jesus that's bringing you home? That's an ambulance. Let's try to fit in. Okay. Now that's a busy picture, isn't it? Very busy. You got a shovel I can borrow? Yeah, wait, he must be one of those guys that cleans out the ashes or something. Hi, I'm a chimney sweep. What do you got for me? I got this house here in Atlanta. Piedmont Park, 1895. And then this survived. Remember Sherman? I marched to Atlanta to get to Richmond. I wanted to go Peachtree Street in Atlanta. Got a hardware store. Got Magnum Goods. Let you guys look at those railroad tracks. You got to get it. Is that another look down Peachtree? No, that's just street. Save the water tower. Uncover the tracks. Repair the 5 points. They must have got to. This is what Sherman hit this part of town. Still got the wires up. Save the. See, I was going with save the clock tower like that. That's what I was going for. Doesn't it look like they're just uncovering these tracks? Yeah, let's fit them in around the corner. Where's your 1 million Chinese people it takes to hammer them in? A lot of times they just bolted them in. Probably with pneumatic jackhammers. This is something sort of piano, organs, Orleans, Atlanta. Hey, that's the first muddy street I've ever seen that they had. Looks like it might just be to keep the dust down to me. Not that day, they don't need it. Look at that building. That's one we looked at. Hey, this guy's using a theodolite. They're surveying. That's a theodolite. See, he's holding and they can measure. Plumb line over a known point. I don't see how they're going to need something like a rod to tell how far apart they are from the known point. They can do that after they move, I guess. But they usually need a Gunther's chain. You really need a Gunther's chain. We didn't want to see a picture of it. It's for surveying. You know, it's like once they figured out the logarithms finally, and what was it, 1620, they figured out, yeah, now we're going to do the things. This is what I used even in 1980 when I learned how to survey. 30 feet long. You know, well, it's 66. Come on, man. One chain equals 66 feet or 100 links. It's 30 meters. I didn't know that. So here's how we learned it. I guess I thought I was learning how to do it like Thomas Jefferson and George Washington. We had better equipment, I guess, because we had the Gunther's chain, man. We know how to rock that chain. This is Columbus. Streets of Columbus. We missed the golden age, everybody. And you can see these people don't have to run around and like not worry about posing for a picture. This is very pixelated. This has been edited for size by them, I'm sure. He's got a lot of things for sale there. They're selling donkey rides. Look at those. See those reed roofs? Those get replaced every couple of years, but they last perfectly. Very Netherlandy. Yeah, we missed the first reset. We're on Gog and Magog. It's all downhill from here. Those were the good old days. Man, I can't believe it. They broke down. Those buses, why did they ever quit the electric chain? Do you see the Mudflood wall? You guys got any fish? So this is somewhere, Ireland, Netherlands, Ballyvaughan, McGinnish Castle, Kerry, so it probably is Ireland, Cork, England. St. Louis, anybody? Orphan train much? Look what we found. Vanilla sky even back then. It's all we're allowed to see. There's an old Spanish fort. Queen Isabella. Listen to that little dog. Hypothermia is the #1 outdoor killer. Humans can live for 3 days without water. Humans can live for 3 weeks without food. If you're not a wimp, a cannibal, a freakazoid, total unfaithful, unrighteous human eater. Cuba, Portugal. This thing about Columbus, but if I can't find it,
The exact place of origin of Christopher Columbus has long been a source of speculation, although some findings strongly indicate that most likely he was Portuguese. A lot has been said and written about this matter, but currently scientists are studying his genetics, which hopefully will shed more credibility to the many theories of Columbus's origin. Actually, since 2003, Professor Lorente, director of the Forensic Genetics Lab for the University of Granada in Spain, has been heading DNA studies to confirm that the remains in the Cathedral of Sevilla in Spain are, in fact, those of Columbus, by comparing the DNA obtained with DNA from Columbus's son. Subsequently, DNA samples from the living descendants of the Portuguese royal lineage were secured and tested by Genomed. These results have not been released so far. But why DNA samples of the Portuguese royal lineage? Because according to documents signed by Columbus, the initials S, F, and Z in his monogram matched the name Salvador Fernandes Zarco, the bastard son of Prince Fernando, brother of King Afonso V of Portugal, in which case his mother was Isabel Gonçalves Zarco. Zarco is the surname of the Ribeira Grande Count, presently heir apparent if Portugal was a monarchy. And in addition, a DNA sample from the heir presumptive Duarte Pio was also obtained and tested. Both of them descend from the male line known as patrilineal descent and are the living descendants of King John I of Portugal. It is by studying the Y chromosome that same family descent is established. There are other documents, such as the Papal Bull of 1493, written in Latin about the discovery of America, in which Columbus' name is in Portuguese, not in Latin as Christophe Columbus, not in Italian as Cristoforo Colombo, not in Castilian as Cristobal Colon. His first name is written as Cristofom, which ends with the sound from the Old Portuguese language, with a little wave as accent mark over the vocal to indicate a nasal sound, and that derived in the current sound uniquely Portuguese. So why did Columbus hide his true identity? A good reason would be to divert Spain from Asia, and it is quite possible that King John II of Portugal made Columbus go to the Spanish king and convince him about the western route. although obviously history books tell it differently, in a version that the Portuguese king saw no merit in Columbus's proposal and refused the funds needed for such quest. At the time, Europe was quite keen on Eastern goods such as spices, silk, and tea. But the Turkish Empire was an obstacle for the Christian nations. So Columbus assured the Spanish king that it was possible to reach Asia sailing westward. Some historians consider him a Portuguese spy that managed to clear the way for the Portuguese to get to India first. And so it was that Admiral Vasco da Gama reached India in 1498, following a course around the African coast. Portugal patiently waited for Columbus's return to sign the Tordesillas Treaty in 1494, thus dividing the world into
Yeah, they're all about the treaties. This is the first time I saw this video.
This letter was written on the same day that Columbus arrives in Lisbon on the 4th of March 1493 and has recently been found in the archives of the Spanish Count of Villa Gonzalo. In his 4 voyages, Columbus gave names to islands, ports, rivers, and places in the New World. It is estimated.
Yeah, this is what I wanted you to hear, because they have a really good argument that within what they call Cuba now, that Columbus, they say, named, there's within 50 kilometers, the islands are all named for towns near the town of Cuba in Portugal. Very much the coincidence.
That roughly 200 new names were given, most of which were Portuguese. Perhaps the most striking case is that of Cuba, the island of the Caribbean. Cuba was a unique Portuguese word and also the name of a town in Portugal where it is thought that Columbus was born. To get more information on the subject of the origin of Columbus, there are some interesting books like Christopher Columbus Was Portuguese by Manuel Luciano da Silva, published in 2008 by Express Printing, and The Portuguese Columbus, Secret Agent of King John II by historian.
Wow. Secret Agent of King John. Hey, I want to thank you guys, for sticking around. If there's anything I missed, saying hello to Matt G, Fractal Dust Bear, Luther. Thank you guys so much. Aaron sticking around. I'm glad you guys got to hear all of that. Bear with me 1 second here. I'll check the emails in a second. There was one I don't remember, how long ago I watched it. But it would be worth checking out. Now, here's a weird one. I'll leave that open. That'll be worth looking at.
Ancient city of Corral dates back to 2006.
Unbelievable. Did everything I could. Now, here's the one from that Bible Miner I had pulled up earlier. The one, oh, wait. I wonder if I have that up. Yep, I do. So let's just look at a couple of seconds here.
(627 BC) and is known as the mother city of South America by some archaeologists. For over a century, archaeologists were searching for such a mother city, and this large settlement, located 120 miles north of Lima, is one of the most ancient of the Americas.
I just want to show you these things aren't just in the United States. These things are China. They're everywhere. It's always been reset time. This is how they added and subtracted with a binary code.
Binary system to record phonological or logographic data.
Why not, you know? What is that?
Bones.
Flutes and trumpets made of pelican bones?
34 cornets made of deer and llama bones. These instruments date to around 2170 BC.
Or 1100, whatever they call it. A lot of different calendars out there, people.
There is evidence of the Soup Valley, with a possible total population of 20,000. The other sites are smaller but very similar to Corral, and also include stone circles. Corral was thought to be the main site of interest, like the culture's capital city, a culture that traded with coastal communities as well as regions further inland, maybe as far as the Amazon.
It's what the Anastasi have going out, you know, in the desert there. It's always the weird stuff, right? This is that one from Bible Miner. Now this one.
The mayor agrees.
Nunca é fácil mudar uma história, não é?
Precisamente la familia. And then there's Count Vasco da Gama, the 19th, an antique dealer in Lisbon, whose Portuguese forefather, a contemporary of Columbus, discovered the ocean route to India. His studies of Columbus leave him little doubt that Columbus was born in Portugal. Why? Because Portuguese tradition says that he was from Portuguese descent and learned his navigational skills at the nautical school of Prince Henry the Navigator.
Para mim nasceu em Portugal, seguramente. Sem todas, sem Alcáceras não sei, mas nasceu em Portugal, era português, era de famílias portuguesas.
So why did it not show the... Looks like George Washington to me. Mud flood, mud flood, mud flood. Not that long ago, people. We're still living in their shadows. It wasn't that long ago. It was grim fairy tales, baby. These are Bible times. If you think that Wiccans and witches are nothing but pink-haired girls who want to get out of doing the dishes, you're wrong, man. It was Hansel and Gretel that are going to eat your children and bait it up and get them addicted to sugar, where that's what they want. They said sugar, not honey, honey.
Simon Wiesenthal, Israel's noted Nazi hunter. Was he a secret agent for King John II of Portugal? And if so...
Isn't this crazy? And I'm not saying I believe any of this. I'm just saying, you know, we didn't know anything about it. It's good connections. It's recent history. I don't trust this Columbus fella as far as I can throw him.
Why did he go to sea for the Spanish?
You wouldn't be allowed to do that unless he was a Templar himself or operating in the name of the Portuguese king.
The Modern-day explorers plan to visit Columbus's European world, and many of the places they visit will be ones not found in the history books. But first they go to Sintra, Portugal.
You got to go to Central. That means 5, I think, or Center, Cuatro, Cinco. Hey, look, another Royal Basque person. They all are RH and negatives. I meant to do this.
Not in Italian. Never wrote anything in Italian. Then the symbols used to sign, the symbols would mean that his original name was Zarko. So the idea is that it was.
Hey, that Z is what the Russians are using right now. They're kind of going Imperial Army all of a sudden. Uh-oh.
Son of Zarko lady and the daughter of Gonçalo Zarko. And he was, probably the father was the infant Prince Dom Fernando of Portugal, who was the son of Dom Juan.
Man, that's weird. I don't know.
They plan to bring in a feast of fresh information that will open these cases wide.
That looks kind of Jewish to me. I don't know why I can't put my finger on it.
Their goal is a difficult one, to reveal the true Christopher Columbus. Some declaring that Columbus hailed from countries and regions other than Genoa, where most are led to believe he was born. Some of these claims in Irving's books declare him to be a member of noble families. They did it by comparing the famous DNA with possible Columbus descendants. The result has not changed history yet.
Oh,
He said
man.
that he's from Italy, that was from the family of the first discoverers of Madeira, Zarco. Okay, and this tradition is very strong in here, and his signature, his Kabbalistic signature, shows that he was from that family. Zarco. Salvador Fernando Zarco.
But there is another.
You know what? That's a nice house. They didn't bomb that one, did they? They kept that one. Those royals that had the pure blood, they got to keep their stuff. It looks like something from The Matrix. You know, is it just pretend? I don't think so.
Easier way to prove that Columbus was from Portugal. It doesn't involve the search for ancient DNA, nor does it require a long road trip. It only involves a map and a short drive to Cuba.
We had to go to Cuba. This is the part I wanted to share with you. Thank you, Lord.
No carregador de Génova, que não sabia quem era a família, que descobria, fazia aquelas navegações todas. Ele fez-o porque era filho do nobre português, do Duque que também era navegador, do Duque de Beja.
Not to forget Vasco da Gama, the 19th.
E é interessante também que, à época, não existiria outra Cuba no mundo.
Sim, tudo indica que ele, que lá chegou, que tenha dado à terra o nome da terra onde teria nascido, eventualmente. Mas isso são especulações, embora haja escritores que já publicaram sobre isso. Mas eu estou firmemente convencido que ele era de origem portuguesa, só podia.
E pode dizer que, à época, não existiria outra Cuba senão a do Alentejo.
Eu não conheço, olhando para o mapa mundo, não conheço mais nenhumas Cubas, senão a Cuba do Alentejo e a Cuba que ele descobriu. Julgo que não existe Cuba em outro sítio qualquer, talvez no Vietnã do Norte, não sei, mas eu desconheço a geografia dessas zonas.
All of these experts and more insist not only that Christopher Columbus was born in Cuba, Portugal, but that he was the illegitimate son of a Portuguese prince. So off we go to Cuba, Portugal, that is. There isn't much to see in Cuba. Here, for instance, is a church dating from the time of the Duke of Beja. It was on the grounds of this church where Columbus was believed to have been born to Isabel Sakara Zarco.
So we got this Zarco again. Here's him proving it that, you know, they got this Zarco. Front and back.
Prince Fernando, Duke of Beja, and of Lady Isabel Gonçalves Zarco. His real name was Salvador Fernandez Zarco, and he was born in the Alentejo here in Cuba.
Columbus born in Cuba, Portugal? That's a bold claim for a nearly anonymous village. But the story goes one step further on the other side of the statue.
On the other side of the monument to Columbus is this plaque. It reads, Alentejo, the motherland of the discovery. It says that on the 28th of October, 1492, Christopher Columbus discovered an island that he named Cuba. There was no other Cuba in the world at the time except this Cuba here in Alentejo, Portugal. But the other sites that he also named in the New World, in the places adjacent to Cuba, have names from the same places that are adjacent to Cuba here in the Alentejo in southern Portugal.
A look at a map of the Caribbean shows this claim to be true. Surrounding the Cuba of the Americas are more than 40 islands and locations with the same name as those adjacent to the Cuba of Portugal. This seems too astounding to be mere coincidence. Place names found on a map of Cuba, Portugal match those surrounding Cuba in the Caribbean. The explorers consider this to be geographic DNA, on par with human DNA. Powerful evidence that Christopher Columbus was perhaps born in Cuba, Portugal. The mayor of Cuba, João Portuguese, sits down with Evaristo in the...
Man, this has been a fantastic way to start a Friday.
When people ask me about gift imaginable, if you're willing to go to follow the path of grief into which beckons us without heartbreak. There's only so many messengers in each generation. If there's no beginning, then where at your start?
You see, that's where you're going to go if you don't have the Bible. The #1 song on Flat Earth Nation.
It's up to you.
One more time. I'm about to wrap up. That's awesome. And if you want to know how to get ready and be ready, you need to right now, if you feel like there have been many called, few chosen, and you might be one of them. You're thinking, what? There's nothing wrong with Jesus Christ. Everything he said is true. And you've done everything except bow your knee and say, Jesus Christ, you are Lord. You are the God who can and has forgiven sins. Now what they need to do, Father, is confess with their mouth. Find someone and say, I am trusting in Jesus Christ's word. Start there. Please, Heavenly Father, I pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Start there. Start there and see where he leads you from there. But keep your hand to the plow. I want to thank you so much. And I give all of that inspiration to the same place that you got it from Jesus Christ, from our effort, because we know nobody's ever going to convince me we are not saved by grace. It's not of him that worketh or him that runneth, but God that shows mercy. And we were born again. And that happens like when you're born again. The complete analogy isn't I climb back into my womb, but that is part of the metaphor as a type. You don't remember choosing to be born. I know. You didn't choose whether your parents would be whatever color you ended up to be. You didn't choose whether they'd have just a little bit more money than you'd be happy. You had no choice in what time in history you'd be born. You had to be born, and you had to be born again. By that same Spirit, when that happens, when God changes your heart from stone to flesh, the big moment of your first love is the realization of that moment. Up until that time, you're finding the things that you used to love, you now hate. The things you used to hate, now you love. You want to be righteous. You want to be pure. You want to stand up every time against abortion. I know you do, and you will. And Jesus Christ will bless you for it. But that's what it means to be born again. It's not something that you can ever look back in time and said, I was in church with X number of people, and 4 of us made the right decision. That sounds like boasting and a good work to me. But if you humbly submit that God saved you by grace, because he's going to have a people, and he's gifted every single one of the sheep with a talent for the good works prepared aforehand, after he has, like those people he addressed the epistles to. Hey, you saints, how you doing? Those fellow believers. That's why when he says, and all of us are going to make it if we maintain. He's talking about all of us Christians, the ones that the letters were addressed to, those others who have shared in being born and a born again experience, biblical born again experience, one of where not of any good work that we could have ever done, even of saying, I've made up my own choice. No, but it seemed like our own choice. Why? Because our sins were before our eyes and we knew we were forgiven. I know I'm forgiven. It'd be silly for me to say otherwise. And certain people, you need to keep that first love. That's what's most important. Because the end was written from the beginning. That's all I can say. And that's what I'll always hear here on Flat Earth Nation. And it is a Flat Earth Nation. Mudflood was Armageddon. I'm never going to tell you anything else. Neither are my friends. Why would they? Why would I? We're trying to prove we have your best interest at heart. Amen. Hallelujah. Aho.